Rejoice. I say it again, rejoice. The Lord is near. What an extraordinary proclamation it really is. I want to say a bit more about our season and this day. I would like to say something about a happy coincidence in our gospel. And finally end with the words of a famous poet, extraordinary poet, my Angelou. We gather in this Advent season, this season which I truly believe is countercultural in so many, many ways. The voices of the world are clear. They are loud. They are direct. And they have their hand on your wallet. Buy, buy, buy. Shop, shop, shop. And you do realize the supply chain is a major issue. So it's okay if the price is $20 more than you expected because they've convinced you you're so happy to have found the item. And you won't exist unless you have it. The messages are clear. Hurry, rush. Of course, I could add to it by saying you do realize 2 weeks from today is Christmas Day. And we'll be gathering at 11 instead of 9, so at least we get 2 hours of extra sleep along the way. Where does that come from? It's of our creation. It really is. And I don't mean to disparage folks that are in marketing and sales who need to make their own living in their own way too. But what a message it is. Hurry, run, buy, shop, get. In that, in the Advent season, the church says, wait. Be still. Be patient. Be full of hope and expectation. Make a place in your hearts, churches and community and world that God might enter in a new way. Bottom line is saying, cooperate with grace. Grace is being given. Will you, will I, will we as community cooperate? It might mean turning off a cell phone. It might mean turning off a television, refusing to look at more news progress. It might mean sitting quietly and waiting, something we're not good at, that God can enter in. The grace is given. The message is clear. Which voice will you follow? What are we to do? We hear it in the gospel over and over again. What are we to do? Well, we're to wait. And be patient with that. What a message it is. And of course, we're halfway there. Wherever there is. Gaudete. You rejoice. It comes initially from the entrance antiphon, although we heard it in the other readings. Rejoice in the Lord always, I say again. Rejoice, the Lord is near. Rejoicing is not a word we tend to use very often. I wonder how many times you've used the word rejoicing. I think I've heard it a few times from young couples when they have a new child. I'm rejoicing in that. But it's not a word we use. It's not common. But shouldn't it be? That's the challenge too, that we rejoice in confidence and hope because of who our God is and because of what we know and experience. Gathered as community. Gathered as people who want to listen and learn in this experience of synodality. Who want to know, what is your experience of church? What offends? What supports? What wounds? What heals? Extraordinary opportunities are being given for us to simply rejoice. Rejoice not in the brokenness, but rejoice in who we are. People who are on the road, struggling, love sinners, to use the word of Ignatius. How clear it is. Embrace it. Rejoice in it. said I wanted to say something about a happy coincidence, which means for the knowledgeable in the crowd, I'm going to make a liturgical faux pas. It's planned, so I don't know if it still counts as a faux pas when you know it and you plan it. But we're celebrating today the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And we're not going to miss that because it's a Sunday. And I ask you this question. Hopefully you know a little bit about this story in Juan Diego, 500 years ago outside of Mexico City, and his encounter with the Virgin Mary. What's most important about the story? Is it because we now have a tilma with an extraordinary image on it that you can visit in the cathedral in Mexico City? In the end, is it really about the message of Mary, which I will quote in a moment? Or maybe it's more simply this. Juan Diego, person of color, a person of limited economic means, a peasant, appears in his present, and Mary appears in his present as a woman of color of limited economic means, saying, where you are, I am. What an incredible statement. Of the accounts that are written down, the words that are specifically recorded are these. That Mary said this, are you not under my shadow and protection? Am I not the source of your joy? Continues to say to Juan Diego, are you not in the hollow of my mantle, in the crossing of my arms? Do you need something more? Let nothing else worry or disturb you. What an extraordinary thing it was and is. So much of us in the United States are unaware that she's the patron of the Americas. Now, I realize so many of us in the Mid-Atlantic and particularly in the Northeast trace our ancestral roots back to Western Europe. But that's not the reality of the United States. If we try and cast the net wider, so many folks trace roots back to Mexico and Central America and have an experience of the Latino world. It's been spoken of as the browning of the church. And what a gift it is. Our Lady of Guadalupe, what else do you need but the revelation of this love of my Son? And so it expresses itself extraordinary in the roses in bloom in the winter, and the tilma thrown before Archbishop Zamaraga, who wouldn't build the church and wouldn't believe that it was real. And now it was real. What won't we believe is real this Christmas? Will we not believe that it could be, that God really does want and need and desire to do something new in our lives? That's the Advent. That's the opening. I have news, both good and bad. And whenever I say that, I always ask what you want to hear. And everybody always says the bad news. Well, I'll give you the bad news. With the pandemic or without the pandemic, there is no return to the normal. It's gone forever, whatever it was. Unless the new normal is rooted and grounded in that experience of Juan Diego and the rest of Señora de Guadalupe. No need for anxiety, no need for fear. Rejoice. Our God is near. Who wants the old normal when we can have the new normal made extraordinary by God's gifts and God's love? The simple challenge of Advent. You know, Advent is really told through the eyes of kind of three groups of folks. The first are the prophets. And because of the cycle we're in, we don't hear from Isaiah on the Sunday readings. It's everybody else but. So it's the only time it's Baruch. It's the only time those sections of Jeremiah, Zephaniah, that we hear those. But they sound like Isaiah to us, don't they? They sound exactly like it. So that's the first group. The second person, of course, is John the Baptist, which was last Sunday in this one. And if you hear the gospel and you only hear this one, it's weird because it begins with, what should we do? Well, what was the question? The question was last week, or the announcement was last week, when John said, Prepare a way in the wilderness, a highway for our God. Fill in your valleys. Lift high what needs to be lifted. Push down what is in the way. And then they're saying, well, how do we do that? And the answer is what we know. Give from your gifts. Feed the hungry. Clothe the poor. Etc. All those commands to bring justice into our world and our community. It's not rocket science. But it was a real challenge 2,000 years ago. And unless I'm mistaken, in 2021, it's still a real challenge. And you know what? I'll guess. I'll project with you. In 2022, it's still going to be a real challenge. No matter what our government does, no matter what it passes, the hungry are with us and need to be fed. Those in poverty are with us in carrying the voice of God and need to be encountered. That's what it looks like. Well, it's not normal. Great. We're done with the normal. We've already cast that aside. Let's be invited to the new normal. And of course, the third player in Advent will be Mary, who will appear over the Sundays coming in preparation for Christmas. This paradigm, this triplet. And so that's the faux pas. Or maybe it's the reality that we needed to hear this day of Juan Diego and Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe. I said I wanted to end with the words of Maya Angelou. In 2005, George W. Bush invited her to the White House for the Christmas tree lighting ceremony. And she penned a long poem, of which I'll only read part of, but I think it roots and grounds us in where we need to be now, in our hopes for peace in Advent and in preparation for Christmas. She wrote this: "Hope is born again in the faces of children. It rides on the shoulders of our aged as they walk into their sunsets. Hope spreads around the earth, brightening all things, even hate which crouches, breeding in dark corridors. In our joy, we think we hear a whisper. At first, it's just too soft. Then only half heard. We listen carefully as it gathers strength. We hear a sweetness. The word is peace. It is louder now. It is louder. Louder than the explosion of bombs. We tremble at the sound. We are thrilled by its presence. It is what we've hungered for, not just the absence of war, but true peace. A harmony of spirits, a comfort of courtesies, security for our beloveds and beloved. We clapped hands and welcomed the Prince of Christmas. We beckon this good season to wait a while with us. We, Baptist and Buddhist, Methodist and Muslim, say, come, peace. Come and fill us and our world with your majesty. We, the Jew and the Janist, the Catholic and the Confucian, implore you to stay a while with us, so we may learn by your shining and shimmering light how to look beyond complexion and see community. It's Christmas time, a halting of hate time. On this platform of peace, we can create a language to translate ourselves and to each other. At this holy instant, we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ into the great religions of the world. We jubilate the precious advent of trust. We shout with glorious tongues at the coming of hope. All the earth's tribes loosen their voices to celebrate the promise of peace. We, angels and mortals, believers and non-believers, look heavenward and speak the word aloud, peace. We look at our world and speak the word aloud, peace. We look at each other, then into ourselves, and we say without shyness or apology or hesitation, Peace, my brother. Peace, my sister. Peace, my soul. I need Advent. You need Advent. Our church and our world need Advent. Gaudete.